Good day, everyone. Welcome back to another discussion, which will talk about the summary of the waves of feminism. So basically, this will just be in a form of a brief discussion, which will talk about the waves of feminism. As you would look on the Gendered Lives book, of course, it's a very long discussion, particularly that it gives some perspectives on the personal and subjective experiences of those who were involved of the movement. So here I will be providing the historical and maybe a sort of contemporary perspective as well, and some um, dynamics going on during these movements. So we have three waves of feminism movement. So if you're going to take a look at this, um, the feminism movement became a reality probably because of the collective. If you would, I would put it in a term that it's already too much to bear for women. So when we say too much, it's already boiling to the point that they cannot bear it anymore. So basically, they came out from their houses, went to streets, and shouting and clamoring for equality. So I know that you've been immersed and already aware of how women were treated by history. So basically, in many civilizations and in many great nations in the past, women are always treated as inferior or lesser human than men. So I will use the term man here, refer to male, because it would be a gender bias as well. So just a disclaimer, just understood the context that if I say men, it's being referred to male persons. All right. So the waves of feminism, the various waves, are also known as the feminist movement, or the women's liberation movement, or the women's rights movement. So basically, it's all just the same. It just have different names, but it points to the same goal. So although the advocacy for women's rights have been in existence since the beginning of time, there have been significant swells points in history where the movement has gained momentum around various issues, particularly in the late 20th and early 21st century. So even before the first wave occurred, so basically there are already that the small clamor for equality from women, but it was not enough. So basically, if it's already a dominating law or rule that women are being treated this way, so they will not be able to elevate themselves to the point of equality to men if they were already in that position for few centuries or even millennium. If you would take a look at it, you are trying to make a change. You're trying to fight for a change, but you are only one among the hundreds. If you're only one among the hundreds, and you are not in a position to fight for equality, so you will have no voice. When you have no voice, that means you cannot make a change. The only way that you can make a change is that to convince others who are experiencing the same thing that you do. So if you are being oppressed and there's somebody being oppressed in there, you have to reach out to that person and to the rest who have the same experiences as you do. So that's that way. If you can reach a higher number, and then you will go to streets, fight for what you're fighting for, probably that would have a change. That might be heard, or at first it may not be, but later on it will. All right. So it was just little by little. The movement has an impact little by little. So the feminist movement continues to this very day as equality for women has not been achieved anywhere in the world. So the first wave is what we call the suffragette movement. So this ranges from 1840 to 1925. But it ended, no, the first wave feminism in the America has ended with the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1919, granting women voting rights. So the suffragette movement, it was actually a shout of clamor for equality, especially on the participation in the political area that they could vote as well like men. So the women's suffrage movement, what we call first wave feminism, of the early part of the 20th century, eventually proved successful in almost every democratic country in the world. So basically, democratic because democratic is a much more feasible or much more flexible nation when it comes to having new ideas or welcoming new ideas and new emerging movements like this. Unlike with the communism, probably with or any other who doesn't welcome rallies and protests, probably it will not be welcome for unless if it has already an impact to other nations. So the issue in the first movement was suffrage or vote. So if they can vote, then they can achieve 1 inch of equality to men. So the first movement are aimed at enlarging women's political rights. So the women are demanding for voting rights for women. So according to what happened to the Seneca Falls Convention, these are one of the women's convention. They have a declaration of sentiments. It states that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So they say this happened in 1848 in New York. So when they say inalienable rights, it cannot be taken from them. So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So these are the grievances suffered by women. So from this time, going back, so they are being denied the right to vote, exclusion from most forms of higher education. It is one of the highest lawyer of the United States before, Attorney Baden Ginsburg, was discriminated when he entered Harvard College of Law because there were only 2 women who during her time who admitted to the College of Law. So mostly she's been point of ridicule knowing that she is a woman. So the other one is restrictions in employment. This is more common in the second wave of feminism, where they are fighting for equality, pay equality, and of course equal opportunity. Denial, the last one is maybe this is not the last one, but these are the common ones. The last is the denial of property rights upon marriage. So basically, women are not given the rights to have a share with the properties with their husband. So in 1900, only one country allowed women the vote. That is Finland. Finland gave women the right to vote in 1906, and years later, followed by New Zealand, and then white women in Canada. Imagine white women, so not the black. White women in Canada got the vote in 1918 to 1919. Manitoba gave it in 1915 to 1916, while Quebec in 1940. So in Canada, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, the Asian countries, Indian, South Asian, Black women did not get the right to vote until 1947. So basically from 1920s or 1916, the black women in the nation are not yet given the rights to vote. Aboriginal women did not have the right to vote until 1951. So this was in 1960, federally. So by 1950, there were 69, and by 1975, 129 countries had granted suffrage to women. So it is already, it is already starting to happen by this time. Most of the countries are already accepting this change. So by 1950, 69 countries, by 1975, 129. But not yet all. So yet receiving the vote did little for women's status in society relative to that of men's status. So basically, the women thought that if they will be granted the rights to vote, they will be the treatment of the society to them will elevate as well, will change. But the reality did not really have that impact. They had the right to vote, but still they were not treated as equal to men still. So the effect of Women's Convention in the Seneca Falls Convention in New York, there were no immediate political impact. The convention fell on deaf ears. The Senate, the Congress, and the executive department did not really have, they don't have any interest in listening to it. Women still were not considered individuals, but rather the property of men. So only on August 26, 1920, women gained the rights to vote. And that was after the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution has been passed. Alright. Well, the second wave of movement, it is already for more women's rights. So the time frame for this was between 1960s and 1995. Some others would say up to 1980s now. So this is a focus on issues of equality and discrimination. So this the primary or what we say that the most renowned movement coming from women from this time are the radical feminism. Although there are forms of feminism as well, we join them, but the most vocal and the most the one being heard was the radical feminism. So women made most of their gains political and economic in 1960s. So from the first wave, the impact is already starting to happen by already in the second wave. So issues of rape, reproductive rights, domestic violence, and workplace safety were brought to the forefront of the movement, and there was a widespread effort to reform the negative and inferior image of women in popular culture to a more positive and realistic one. So they already the women started to brought to the table already all those things that they suffered, and questioning why they have to suffer it. So that's why they're demanding for reform and to change this endemic image given to them. So they relied on rap groups or consciousness-raising groups in which women gathered to talk informally about personal experiences with sexism and to link those personal experiences to larger social and political structures. They relied on revolutionary analysis and politics along with high-profile public events to call attention to the oppression of women and to demand changes in women's place in society and changes in relationships between women and men. So they are also active in working for the liberation of women in non-Western countries. So basically, they started to, as I said earlier, they're trying to collect the same personal experiences that they suffered because of sexism, discrimination. So and then they relate it to a larger context, which is a societal context and political structures already, and then to have it to raise it as a complaint and as a clamor, they tried to join the public events like public rallies, and then they were insisting their own motives Kumbaga, doon na yung sa rally nga nitabo, but it was for different event. Let's say, for example, it's for a sports event, it's a sports fest. They will go there, and they might bring banners and whatsoever resources they can to show what they are trying to portray of their movement. So the issues of the second wave, many women find that the jobs that pay them the most, like pharmacy top the list, physicians and surgeons, are not easily available to them. While our nursing, family practice, or other lower paying specialties such as computer scientists, speech and language pathologists, to name a few, more available to them. So basically, they are discriminated with some jobs, especially the high paying jobs. Only those low paying jobs are being available to them. So the majority of women continue to work in traditional employment sectors like nursing, teaching, helping, and service sectors. The pink collar jobs, often called pink ghettos, murag ilahang exile. So women continue to encounter a glass ceiling where they cannot break through an invisible glass barrier and find themselves barred from upper management plus CEO positions. So basically, they cannot be promoted to those upper management and CEO positions. There seems like to be a barrier, although they are qualified, but they cannot achieve it. Sexism and harassment in the workplace continues to be commonplace. The name calling, the use of derogatory words or terms. Sexism colors the everyday lives of women. Education often steers them to particular employment, and discrimination and violence is a constant threat no matter what. So, in the education sector, in the 1960s, there was a gap between men and women regarding literacy. Many thought that equal access to education would bring about change. Literacy rates increased for women. So, although there was a gap of between the literacy rate between men and women, but women tried their best to increase the literacy rate of women. So by the 1960s, more women had knowledge and access to contraceptives. So this is already the improvement, the education and this reproductive rights. Development of the birth control pill drastically changed women's lives. They had control and power over their own bodies. So this is what they're trying to fight as well, that they should have the right to control their body because it's their body. They want to be pregnant with their own will and want, not because of the will of the husband or whatsoever. So it was thought that if women had power over their reproductive role, they could choose if and when they would be mothers. They could control their careers, which were cut short because of pregnancy and motherhood. So the outcome of radical feminism, of course, they identified the structural basis of women's oppression. They have already sorted out. The Kennedy administration also set up a presidential commission on the status of women, which was chaired by former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. So of course, they had paid maternity leave, they have access to education, and of course, they have good child care to help women. So women became more involved in protests and advocacy for equality for creating local, state, and federal feminist organization. They have the National Organization for Women in 1966, which was created with the founding statement demanding the removal of all barriers to equal and economic advance, and declared the true equality for all women as its aim. So the second wave can be characterized by a general feeling of solidarity among women fighting for equality. It also saw the creation of several types of feminism. Radical feminism was prevalent, which involved the complete elimination of male supremacy and challenging of all gender roles. So let's move to the third wave. This was spanning around 1980s and 1990s. During the 1980s, women's equity progress was slow but steady, still fighting for equality in the public and private spheres. It includes women of different ethnicities, abilities, and disabilities, classes, appearances, sexual orientations. Of course, it does not only single out the white women, but all races of women, Black, Asian, African, whatsoever. Less fully formed and less uniform than most other branches of feminism um, that are also included. So the goal of the third wave was to end violence against women, aims to change policies that limit parents' abilities to participate in paid labor, primarily tried to bring in communities that were previously left out of feminist goals and recognize the intersectionality of oppression, like Asians and Black women. It is often demarcated as beginning in 1991 with Anita Hill accusing Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment. So the third wave started with this event. Both parties were African American, the woman and the Clarence Thomas. And Thomas was seen as a popular candidate for the nomination due to the need for African American presence in the Supreme Court. Hill came forward in front of the all-white male Senate. Siya lang ha, a black woman representing herself in the Senate full of white male members. And Thomas retaliated by denying everything and claiming to be a victim of a high-tech lynching. It's accusation. So she was tying the dates and butang-butang sort of. Hill was faced with tremendous backlash and her character was attacked, instead of her testimony being believed. Her trial had been televised and the sight of a black woman reporting the harassment of the clearly far from inclusive Senate impacted women all over America. Despite the discrimination and the backlash and the attack on her character from the Senate, it has a big impact to all of the women all over America. The sympathy of the public and in the audience, especially the women, are into Anita Hill and not to the Senate or not to Clarence Thomas. So one of the issues of the third wave is the language. The use of derogatory terms like spinster, bitch, whore, cunt. There's many more to be used in derogatory ways about women. Even here in the Philippines, we have our own terms, pok or whatsoever. Violence against women, domestic abuse, rape, childhood, sexual abuse, harassment, sexual exploitation, human trafficking like physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse. So the outcome of the third wave defined sexual liberation as a process of first becoming conscious of the ways one's gender identity and sexuality have been shaped by society, and then intentionally constructing and becoming free to express one's authentic gender identity. So they are being liberated sexually now. First, they identify and conscious of their identity, and then be aware of their identity, which has been shaped by the society, and then they are already free to express their authentic gender identity, knowing that the society has already been facing for a change. So removal of the derogatory terms labeled to women, such as bitch, slut, whore, etc. And there is also emphasis on women's reproductive rights. It is not feminism's goal to control any woman's fertility because it cannot be controlled, only to free each woman to control her own. Alright, so basically class, before the impacts and the effect, the waves, the protests, the rallies, the tears and the sweat and the blood invested by millions of women around the globe, before you will curse yourself for being a woman. And why you born that way? That is because you are being treated as a property of man, as a less human, inferior, and whatsoever level. So that's why male people will just do whatever they want, discriminate women in whatever way they like, and would give them fun like that. So basically, it's good, and you are so fortunate, especially the women of today's generation, that you were born this way or this time, because probably you will be part of this. And I guess I would be proud if you are part of this movement, if you were born in their generation. So me, as an educator, as an instructor, of course, I sympathize with all the women who've been suffering for this kind of sufferings that's not supposedly that it should be. I mean, it shouldn't be theirs to suffer because of just of their gender or because of their sex. All right, so as part of it, as a summary of the feminism, that was the overall. The summary of the waves of feminism. That is the overall impact. That's what happened. So I have not included all of the things that has been um, discussed in the Gendered Lives book, probably because it would make the discussions too long. So I still prefer not to have it, especially the types of feminism, that you should study on it because it will be part of our evaluation or our assessments later on. So thank you. God bless.